Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Playtech TV. My name is Kevin and today we're going to be checking out this Asus G771JW-T7121H gaming laptop. So let's start off first then with the exterior. So this thing looks really nice. It's got the brushed aluminium design, which we've seen before, but I really do like it. It gives it a really premium look to it, and I just think it looks really nice. However, what it's lacking is a lot of the red accents that you usually get, which tends to spice up the laptop just a little bit more. However, that's not the end of the world. It just makes it look a little bit more plain, which some people might like because it gives it a more kind of like understated look to it. However, some people might have liked it to have a bit more color to it. Personally, I think it still looks absolutely great. And the ROG logo on the back also lights up, so that looks really good too. Now size-wise, I think it comes in a really nice size and weight. It's just a really good balance, this laptop. It's like got the performance and everything you'd want to be able to game, so it's kind of like there if you wanted a desktop replacement. However, it's still small enough and light enough to be able to take around with you all day without it giving you too many problems. I mean, this definitely isn't a thin and light laptop, especially with the specs this guy's packing, but it does a really good job regardless, and I'd be fine carrying a laptop like this around all day. It wouldn't be a worry at all. Let's move on and talk about the specs, and this guy's packing some serious hardware, that's for sure. So CPU-wise, it's featuring the Intel i7 4720HQ processor. That's a 4-core or quad-core processor with hyper-threading. 2.6 GHz base clock and a 3.6 GHz boost clock, so that's pretty good there. Now chipset wise, this is on the Intel HM87 Express chipset. System memory wise, you're getting 16 GB of DDR3L, that's the low voltage memory at 1600 MHz, so that's a 2x8 GB kit. Display wise, it's coming with a 17.3 inch IPS 1080p display, so I really like that. It just looks really nice. IPS displays have great viewing angles, just really nice color saturation, so that's really good. Now GPU wise, it's coming with a NVIDIA GeForce GTX 960M with 4 GB of GDDR5 video memory. Storage-wise, you're coming with a 1TB HDD for your mass storage and a 128GB SSD, so that's good. That means it's going to be really snappy, but you still have the mass storage for if you want to download, a lot of games or a lot of media or anything like that. Networking-wise, coming with wireless 802.11b GNN plus Bluetooth 4.0, so pretty standard there. Dimensions-wise, it's coming in at 415 by 280 by 30.4 millimeters, so that's pretty good. Not too fat, not too big at all. It's as I said earlier, a nice balance I find. Weight-wise, coming in at 3.5 kilograms with a 6-cell battery, so a little bit more on the heavy side, but justified given the specs this guy is featuring. OS-wise, it's coming with Windows 8.1, although you will be able to upgrade to Windows 10, obviously, and warranty is just 2 years, so that's pretty good too. Now let's move on to the screen. So the first thing you'll notice, this being an IPS display, is that it has brightness for days. There is so much brightness. When you turn it up to very bright, at nighttime, even in a well-lit room, it can be a little too much. I was generally running it about 3/4 of the way up the brightness scale, and it looked just fine. It was really good. So there's heaps of brightness. The contrast is fantastic. Everything just looks so good, and as I said earlier, the viewing angles are absolutely fantastic, so it's just really good to look at. It's very glare free as well, and as far as the screen goes, I just have no real complaints. It just looked fine. Did everything perfect. It was great for gaming, great for media. It was just great for everything. I have no complaints. Just a really top quality screen. Now as far as the sound goes, it comes with 2 built-in speakers on the top. That's definitely what I like to see. Way better than downwards firing speakers, that's for sure. So I always like to see that the speakers are mounted on the top. It goes pretty loud, not much bass though, which, I mean, you could be saying, well, it's a laptop, so what do you expect? But some of the other ones do have a bit more of a punch to them. This one does still have a little bit, but I was expecting a little bit more in the bass department. There is no dedicated sub, so you you can't have everything, I guess. It doesn't sound tinny though. That's a thing that a lot of laptops have a problem with, especially when the volume goes up quite high. They get this real tinny noise to it, and this one definitely didn't have that, so it did very well in terms of sound quality. Now keyboard. So the keyboard's got a pretty good layout for the most part. All the like brightness and keyboard brightness, screen brightness and volume keys are up on the function keys. Some people like that. Personally, I don't. I like it when they put the screen brightness and volume down on the arrow keys. I just find it a bit easier. You can usually just do it with one hand, a lot easier. But that's not the end of the world. The arrow keys as well feel a little bit squeezed in, but again, that's not really in the world. It does. The whole keyboard does light up very nicely though, and there's a lot of adjustment with the backlighting on the keyboard. The keys themselves have a good, pretty good amount of travel to them for a laptop as well. There's definitely no like desktop mechanical keyboard, but it does a really good job, and it was fine for gaming, fine for typing. I had no real complaints with how it felt. There's no macro keys though, so some people might have an issue with that. Personally, I don't use macro keys that often, so it wasn't really the end of the world for me. But as far as the just general use goes, it was just great. And for gaming, it still did a really good job too. So I don't have any real complaints with it, except the Windows key can be a little bit trigger happy at times. I'm not sure what it is with this guy, but for some reason it just felt like you hit the Windows key a lot more often than not. Maybe it's just me not being very good with it, but yeah, that was just another thing I did notice. Now let's move down from the keyboard to the touchpad, and this touchpad was really, really good. Now it's pretty hit or miss, I find, with laptops, especially gaming laptops, when it comes to touchpads. Either they're really good or they're just really bad. Now this one was really good. So I thought the size and the sensitivity and all of that was just really nice. It was really, really easy to use. Clicking gives a real nice tactile, it has a real nice tactile feel to it, and really nice click. So that's really good too. And it's definitely one of the better ones I have used out there. I've used some pretty bad ones before, but this one just felt nice, very easy to use, very easy to click. I have no complaints when it comes to the touchpad. Moving on then to performance, and it did a really solid job. It's kind of like a medium tier when it comes to like upper middle tier when it comes to gaming laptops in terms of performance. So for your kind of like low medium requirement games, you're probably going to be able to get away with maxing everything out. Obviously you want to be gaming with it plugged in because of battery boost, but yeah, so you should be able to get away in that sense. For your high requirement games, your AAA titles and stuff, you're probably going to be able to get away with, high, maybe an ultra preset. However, you're definitely going to have to play with the filters and maybe bring them right down or turn them off entirely to get nice, smooth gameplay. But overall, it should be able to get you by just fine for all your 1080p needs. You just might have to make a few adjustments here and there. So let's jump into the benchmarks then and see how it did. So first up was Intel Extreme Tuning Utility, the benchmark within that software. And it scored 715 marks, which is pretty solid. So that i7-4720HQ did a really good job there. I was quite impressed. That's really good for a gaming laptop. Next up was Unigine Valley on the Extreme HD preset, and it scored 20.8 frames a second. Now that's a fairly solid score for a gaming laptop. That is, it might seem a little bit low, but honestly, that is a really solid score for a gaming laptop. Some of the ones I've tested couldn't get over 10 frames a second on the Extreme HD benchmark. It's really punishing. So yeah, that was quite impressive that it got 20.8. Next up was Unigine Heaven. This is everything maxed out on Ultra with the filters all the way turned up ×8. So on DirectX 11, it scored 19.8 frames per second, or 19.5 frames per second, I'm sorry. So that was really solid. I thought that was pretty good too. And then on OpenGL, it scored 17.9 frames per second. So what can we tell from this performance? Well, it's what I said before, basically. It's going to get you by for your 1080p gaming just fine. You're just going to have to play around with probably the filters. You're not going to be able to just max everything out and it be fine. But aside from that, it's going to be able to get you by, and you should be able to, once you get all your settings just right, have a really nice gaming experience. And for older games, it's just going to plow through them, no worries at all. Moving on to temperatures now, performances and everything. How did it do in terms of temperatures? So CPU-wise, we tested this by doing the stress test within Intel Extreme Tuning Utility, and it went up to 87 degrees Celsius on the CPU. So that's getting fairly up there. That's pretty toasty, that's for sure. However, there was no thermal throttling, and you still have a bit of a gap there before it does start thermal throttling. Now, as far as the GPU went, during the Unigine Valley Extreme HD benchmark, it went up to 83 degrees Celsius, which is also getting fairly toasty up there. But it leads me into my next point, which is noise. So at idle, this is just completely silent. Very, very good. You know, casual things, browsing and watching videos, it's just dead silent. So noise-wise, it does very well. But on load, it's still fairly quiet. It's definitely below average for gaming laptops. So it does a really good job in terms of noise. And I think that's what they've gone for, Asus have, with this laptop, is they've gone for a very conservative fan curve, which means you're going to get higher temperatures. However, the trade-off is that you get the lower noise. So I think that's a good trade-off, and honestly, I didn't really have a problem with it. I'd rather it be slightly lower in terms of noise and slightly higher temperatures than the other way around, and you have, like, you know, a hairdryer noise coming out of the laptop. Now let's move on to battery life. Now this is always kind of difficult for me to cover because you know, everyone has different use case scenarios. You know, some people might have the brightness at full, some people might have the brightness at the minimum. Some people might just be browsing the web or typing up documents. Other people will be watching movies or anything like that. So it's kind of hard, but I'll try to give you a general figure. So if you're got the brightness down, you know, pretty low, and you're just doing casual things, you know, browsing the web, you'll see battery life of around, you know, 5 hours, maybe a bit less than 5 hours. So it does pretty good for a gaming laptop if you've got everything on quite low settings. However, if you're gaming and you've got, you know, everything turned up, then that's going to drop substantially down to, you know, between 2 and 3 hours. It's going to use a lot of battery if you're gaming, that's for sure. So battery life is always quite hard to say, but that gives you kind of like a ballpark figure of where it's going to be. Which brings us now to the conclusion, and what do I think of this Asus G771 laptop? So I think it's really good. It's a really solid, like, upper middle tier laptop, or maybe, you know, like lower high tier. I don't know how you'd put it, but you know, it fits in really nicely. It's just a really solid in that area. It's a really great balance between, you know, power and size. So you're getting some fairly powerful components, especially on the CPU, but also that 960M does a fairly good job too, but without getting an absolute giant laptop out of it. So I think it is quite a good balance and a good compromise between the two. Now, it has a pretty decent keyboard for the most part. I only had a few complaints about minor things, but nothing major. And the touchpad is absolutely perfect. I really like the touchpad. It has mid-level performance that should get you by for all your 1080p gaming needs. As I said, for low requirement games or medium requirement games or older games, it should do just fine. With very high requirement modern games, you might need to play around with a few of the settings to get it just right. However, some people, you know, want different things. Some people are fine at just gaming over 30 frames. Other people want to be gaming at over 60 frames. So it's up to the individual, and I'm sure you could get the settings just right so it's exactly how you want it. And at the end of the day, I think this is great value for money when you consider what you're paying and what you're actually getting when compared to other gaming laptops on the market. So I think it's really solid with a really nice display that's going to be great for media and for gaming, and pretty decent sound quality for the most part. And I just think it's a good overall laptop, and I would definitely recommend it to people out there that are looking for a good balance of a gaming laptop that's also still quite portable. And I think this one does a really good job. Now, I thank you all for watching this video. Please subscribe to Playtech TV if you haven't already, and like the video. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.